Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I am your host, Solaris Blue Raven, and I'm here with my very special guest, Kyle Ford. Kyle, you with me?
Yep.
All right.
Still here.
Yeah, and if people want to get in touch with you now, do you have a website?
No, I don't. I just use Facebook for the most part.
So if anybody has a question for you later on or something, if they want to contact you, obviously they can do that through Facebook.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And also, if you guys in the chat have a question, just type it in, and I'll take a look in the chat. I'm poking my head in and out of there, so we'll definitely be handling that tonight as well. And also, so we were talking about the transmutation aspects, alchemy, soul transmutation. I like that terminology you used, and I totally resonate with that also because my background is about DNA activation and transfiguration of the atom, which is all based on frequency, and I'm sure you're aware of this. Are you actually working in the realm of frequency and accessing different levels of consciousness through frequency?
Well, I've sort of worked with a lot of healing stuff through sort of picking up on frequencies and people's energy and determining, through chakras and things like that. But also sort of applying the alchemical thought to it with different metallic energies and crystal energies and things like that. So as far as frequencies goes and picking up on those kinds of things, that's what I've experienced with. So,
nice. Yeah. That's a wonderful area. Well, that's the key to our evolution and ascension is really, and I don't have to tell you or the listeners this, but we heal our bodies through consciousness and intent and multidimensional design work. I mean, the thing is most people are just programmed to believe in the linear world instead of the multidimensional realms of consciousness and all of the fantastic energies associated with that. So it's quite amazing when you think about it. Now, have you done any research with crystal skulls?
Yeah. John DeSalvo's big thing is crystal skulls, and I had always been fascinated by them since I was a kid. My father was really interested in things like, abnormal science and the paranormal and stuff. Obviously, we were kind of raised in the UFO sort of research sort of family. So I was always wondering and curious, are there only so many crystal skulls that, have to be found throughout the world, or are there hundreds, or several, whatever. And John really brought that to light for me. He's been finding them from all over the world in different areas, different cultures, and he has professional people try to test them. And I don't know how accurate the testing can be, considering that they're, made of different minerals and things like that. But it's really interesting to find, the correlation between how the crystal skulls are carved in terms of sort of a cultural artistic kind of pattern and the places that they find them in. For instance, he found a crystal skull that was dated from the Hongshan culture in China from about 4,000 years ago, I think, 4,000 or 6,000. But to me, the crystal skull was very representative of work from South America, in my opinion. A lot of the Peruvian kind of elongated skulls and things like that. So it's really neat to sort of have his scientific perspective and then my art history, anthropological background sort of merged together when we look at the crystal skulls. So
yeah, you guys are a good team. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So John also, he has a sense of, he obviously is very psychic, and he also tunes into the frequency associated with the crystal skulls, right?
He certainly seems to have a different impression and with every one of them. And I think that he, certain ones come to him for a reason, I think.
Right. Yeah. I've looked at I actually have to have him on my show. I've looked at his page. Yeah. And I see all these different skulls, and he's always trying to say, which one did you guys bring to this? And I think it's really interesting. He's great. And it's interesting. I mean, to me, it's not just about the crystal skulls, but it's also about the crystals in general. I mean, these are gifts from the universe, whatever you want to call it, literally that are here to assist us in our evolution. And if people really know how to work with the crystals, and we do, I mean, right down to everything we do with technology these days is based on crystals, really, when you think about it. So
absolutely. And I find that it's really interesting that these, older people decided to carve them into skull shapes. And I think that they had they recognized the power of human consciousness and everything like that. So it's just interesting that, why a skull as opposed to any other body part,
Right. Exactly. Well, to me, it's like transferring consciousness from one dimensional space to another. And that's what it reminds me of. Yeah. So I think that's what they were up to, like, say, pre-Atlantean, if you want to go to that dimensional space. But yeah, it's fascinating. And of course, I think we have that cellular memory, which means, our celestial heritage. This is why I'm really big on celestial heritage, because it blows out all the other stuff that man talks about, with the lineage of mankind. I'm talking about before that mankind showed up on the map. I'm talking about our celestial heritage here.
Right.
And that's really what we have in our cellular design. And of course, mainstream and all these linear worlds try to shut us off and kind of dumb everybody down. But this is what we're here for, is to activate people and make them understand that we're dealing with something on a very high spectrum, and that people need to not be afraid, but actually start to embrace the higher levels of consciousness. You can't be afraid to go into the ocean and learn to swim. I mean, you literally need to learn how to do these things. And I think a lot of people get kind of stunted along the way.
Absolutely. And there's so much that I personally have never had I'm not very good at, touching certain objects and picking up on things from them, or reading kind of, maybe, tapping into that consciousness. But it's something that I would definitely like to learn how to develop, so that I can actually sort of use these skulls for that purpose as well, as opposed to just a scientific study, and sort of apply that area too.
Right.
And see what kind of information they hold.
Right. Well, it seems to me like you've done automatic writing, haven't you, or no?
I have not. I've never done. I don't.
Really?
Well, maybe
that surprises
I have.
me. I bet you have. I can't imagine anybody not doing that. And I think they do it even when they don't want to.
Right. Well, for ritual, I've done some pretty interesting stuff. When I primarily work with when it comes to more, I don't know if you want to call it earth-based magic, but it's more natural magic. I work with a lot of Norse stuff because I have, Norwegian heritage in my blood, and I feel like that it resonates with me the best because it's, lineage. And I've done a lot of devotional work with, Odin, and his big thing is poetry. And I've kind of composed random poetry. It sounds crazy, but I've just written these words, and I've written them in runes, and it just comes out, and it's very interesting. I guess is it somewhat similar to maybe a writing form of glossolalia?
I would say, yeah, it sounds like that. And also, well, channeling comes to mind in one form or another. Yeah. But, a lot of people think channeling is, sometimes people channel entities and disembodied spirits. And other times people are actually channeling their higher self, oversoul, superconscious, which is merged with other different dimensional spaces and off-world intelligence, like extraterrestrial. So it takes on so many different formulas. Like the Vril Society, for example, they were actually accessing multidimensional celestial races and bringing in the downloads. And I believe you're obviously capable of that. I know I am, and I'm sure many of the listeners are as well. So once you start focusing on what you want, there's no space and distance in the illusion of time. I mean, that time doesn't exist. Space and distance aren't there. So you can literally just focus on whatever you want to bring in whatever sector and whatever space in the universe or here on this timeline or on this planet and pull it in. And I know you can do that. So that's why I asked if you were doing that. I think it's fascinating. And I think if people would really start to access the truth behind some of these crystal skulls. I know a lot of people do, but to me, I've seen a lot of them just kind of meditate and then they get this impression. And I'm not real impressed with that, to be honest with you. I think we need hardcore data that's more systematic, more actually based on the machine language of what was creating this whole dynamic on this timeline.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had a lot of, we've done the expos and stuff with the skulls. We'll allow people to touch them. And we've had a various number of psychics say, different things on the spectrum, anywhere from, oh my God, I don't want to go near that thing, to holy crap, my mind is just blown, So it's kind of, I don't know who to believe.
Well, I think it's based on their evolution. I think it's based on how much spiritual work they've done, because a lot of people who have fear haven't gotten through that barrier yet, and so they're still afraid.
Right.
They automatically are afraid of something they maybe they don't understand in a vibrational frequency and signature. So I've seen that also a lot. I mean, to me, if you're neutral, you have no emotional content behind it. I mean, to a point where you're not being manipulated, I think is probably a wise thing when you're accessing. I haven't had any encounters with crystal skulls. If I ever do, it'd be quite interesting. I think I love crystals in general. I have plenty of those in my house, but not the crystal skulls.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun. Have you done much traveling outside the U.S.?
I've only been to Glastonbury,
nice.
England.
Yeah,
and that was a really cool experience. I can't explain it. Just something about the energy over there was a lot different than, obviously here it's really sick. I think the United States is a great country to live in, but I think there's a lot of bad stuff going on, and not just here, in other parts of the world. But when I was over there, for some reason, I just felt like I time traveled. It was instantaneous, like happiness. Like I was like, oh my God, I belong here. Mm-hmm. It was so nice. So it was really something like out of Lord of the Rings. I think it was very it was old world, old timey, and exactly that's what it is. But it just felt so neat.
Sounds like the
other
ancient
than that,
spirits, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on, and I feel like, I would love to visit that place again. And I think there's a lot of, I don't know much about ley lines, but I've heard that England has quite a few interesting ones running through them, I think. So, that's another thing to take in consideration.
Yeah, I agree. I love Scotland too. I have my ancestry's over in Scotland, so I have a real strong resonance with Scotland, and I have to get over there. I know that. But yeah, the Huron, unfortunately, America is getting very noxious, let's say, energetically speaking. And for people who are very psychic and sensitive, it's very disruptive. I can't tell you how many people have contacted me who are having sleep problems, who are waking up like really almost like on red alert, frantic, like panicky. Yeah. And that's not normal. So they're psychically picking up on what's happening in their parameters and their environment. It's not just a personal psychological issue. Literally, it's empathic and energetic. So, there's so much.
I've for sure. And I found myself, just kind of having these moments of like, just sadness. Like, it's just depressing that all this stuff's going on. There's something wrong. And it's just, I've cried just reading some things in the news. And I tend to stay away from that now.
Oh, yeah, it's so negative.
I don't want to, Right. So,
well, yeah, I agree with you on that. Well, this country needs to be healed, and we can do it through consciousness. But once again, you have people controlling and manipulating the psyche, and they've been doing a mass mind control like you wouldn't believe. And I don't have to tell you that or the listeners, but they're literally trying to implant data that's non-productive, that's stunting the evolution, the spiritual evolution of people, bleeding them psychically and energetically. The media is notorious for this, mainstream, and of course Hollywood and the crap that's going on in D.C. I mean, it's just we're getting hit at all different levels. We're getting people here who are infiltrating this country who don't love this country, who want to see us all be hurt. So yeah, you're probably picking up on the grieving of America, and people are very sad. They're going from sadness to getting frustrated to a point where, well, what do we do? How do we take our country back? How do we shift gears? And I think shifting gears really is about higher consciousness. I think the only way we're going to be able to change this dynamic is through the ascension process of higher consciousness and everybody working together and letting go of all the psychic wars and everything else. They've just got to learn to navigate together in order to break these barriers. So. And
I completely agree with you, and I can't tell you how much I've, aside from all the crap that's been going on, I've met so many people, younger people, like this younger generation that's coming in who are very psychically aware, and they're looking into, it's like we're living in the 60s again. It's really strange. Like, I've kind of felt like this hippie movement happen. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but a lot of younger people I've been meeting are these young kids who are just really getting into magic and alchemy and all this, like, crystal energies and stuff like that, even really young kids, little kids. And I think it's just really great that I think this is a sign. I hope it's a sign that things are starting to change.
Oh, I do too. Well, they need role models too. And I don't want to see these kids dumbed down through a bunch of crazy vaccines and garbage. And then they treat them like dirt in school. I mean, it's bad enough. I mean, I consider mainstream schools to be prisons. I mean, honestly, they go on a bus and then when they leave, and if they do something wrong and criminal later on, they go on a bus and they go to a prison. I think it conditions people for prison. I really do. I mean, there's nothing productive about it. And most people who learn and evolve and grow usually grow outside the system. That's when we become enlightened, when we leave the system, when we break orbit with the system, we become enlightened beings. So I feel really bad for the kids, and I like to see beings like you as role models out there, especially with your magical background, because that's very, very important. So, and of course, kids are getting superstitious. I mean, some people, like I said, the reason we're addressing the occult and mysticism tonight in general is because I'm so tired of people getting scared of it. It's not all boogeyman. It really isn't, folks.
Well, there's a lot of negative portrayal of it as well, like on TV. There's movies that have been coming out lately that are it's just awful.
Right. Well, yeah, they demonize everything in the bad way, because obviously we can go there too. But literally, they really do it. They distort everything and twist it all around. And I'm not saying there are no safe zones. I mean, you have to create your own boundaries, as we talked before, psychic boundaries. You can be attacked by anybody, whether it's a regular person on a linear world, three-dimensional world, astral plane, multidimensional space. You have to learn how to set boundaries, and you also need to learn how to fortify yourself and also be able to counter psychically. And I think that's really important. Can you imagine teaching children how to counter psychic attacks so that they're not being manipulated as children growing up? I mean, I wish my parents taught stuff like this, right?
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, because how sensitive they are.
Right. No, I know. Yeah. Maybe one day we'll be able to teach that stuff in schools.
Right. I don't know. This is what it is. It should be like X-Men, where they go for their special abilities, which are literally multidimensional mastery. Yeah. and are able to do these
Right.
things. But yeah, I totally think that that's where we need to be. Instead of warping everything and creating this distortion and interference, we need to accentuate the gifts and the abilities on a multidimensional avatar level and not be afraid of that. And then, there's, like I said, there's good and evil everywhere. You just have to learn how to navigate and pick and choose what you want and be prepared. I think that's the biggest thing. You can't run.
Absolutely.
That's for darn sure. There's no place to run in your body, and there's no place to hide on any dimensional space when you're out there. So, and one thing is sure, we all transfer out at some point in the continuum, and even with that transfer, you have to be lucid enough to understand where you're going and where you're navigating as well. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Have you worked with the dead a lot at all, or facilitated anything? Cemeteries. I know you said you were at a cemetery, or do you do a lot of work in cemeteries, or?
I've done some stuff with Ouija boards.
Okay.
Yeah, I just actually purchased a really nice one from 1910.
Holy cow! Where'd you get that one?
I found it on eBay, actually. Wow. Very lucky to find it at the price I found it at. So, it's definitely got some energy to it. It works. Like, I don't know if I can feel it necessarily, but I had a friend come over and we sort of messed with it, and it moved slightly, and I was really surprised. I've never had one actually work, in any of my experiences with it. So I've tried to get them to work in cemeteries or, places that are supposedly haunted, and it didn't really have much luck. But I don't know if maybe it's because a lot of more things are opening up for me consciously that it's sort of working more.
It might just like you. Well, a lot of people are scared of the Ouija boards, and I understand that because then you have people who don't know what they're doing with a board. Right. I mean, if you have somebody who knows what they're doing, then it's not really a big deal because they understand the dynamics and consciousness involved, and you kick out the disembodied spirits and the entities and the lying. Obviously the world is saturated and astral planes are saturated too. I just think it's about preparation and experience. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, I just find it interesting. You were talking earlier about people or energies and forces using the occult to, get at people. But, they marketed the Ouija board as a Parker Brothers item, a toy, and they put it out in toy stores for, young kids who didn't know what they were doing to have access to it. I think that could be part of a lot of that, that manipulation that you were talking about earlier with using occult materials and things like that to get people to sort of as victims to that sort of thing.
I totally agree with you on that one. Yeah. Well, I think people just, like I said, it's basically preparation and understanding what they're dealing with on so many levels. Yeah, I remember Parker Brothers. Yeah, and it was treated as a game, entertainment. Once again, they're using that. They do that with tarot. I mean, they do that with. I understand how they do this. Yep. Oh, it's to entertainment only. I'm sorry, but if you're gonna do a reading with somebody, and you really need to be professional, and you need not to pretend it's a game.
Exactly.
And that's where I come from. I don't play games with people. If I do a reading for somebody, it's legit. I'm not sitting there pulling stuff out of the ethers for them to entertain them. And I know you understand that too, but I see that a lot also. And Dory, if you want to call in, that's fine. There she is. I had to add her to my contacts. This is Dory. Hi, Dory.
Hi, hon. How are you?
Good. How are you? Lovely picture, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And this is Kyle Ford.
Hi, Kyle.
Hello. Hi. How are you?
I'm good. I've been going through the same thing as you probably since I was very young. I had a question for you.
Sure.
Probably two questions. I'll do it really quick. The first question is, now that you're doing astral, is there someone accompanying you when you're doing it? When you go to dimensions, I know exactly what you're doing. There's a lot of us that are doing that now. But now, are you being accompanied by someone? Or are you doing this solo?
I've been doing this since I was from what I can remember, from around 11 or 12 years old. I'm 30 now, so it's been some years. But it's been a situation where I'll, go to bed at night and then I'll wake up in the middle of the night and then my mind will be in a certain state of consciousness and I'll sort of slip out of my body in a few different ways sometimes.
Yeah, I do it constantly. I vibrate,
cool,
but now there's a difference. It seems at night they know not to bother me. If I'm in my bedroom, nothing will happen. I made sure of that. You could put demands on that, You definitely have to state your intention, like, nope, this is my time to rest. I don't want to be bothered.
Sure.
But now times are a shift or a change, and I don't want to sound like an idiot, but now if I go on the couch and I have to take a nap or something, I could feel someone come down. I could feel it. My legs go to the side. They pull me up. And so now I've studied remote viewing for years and remote influencing forever. And I said, wake up, because I would lucid dreaming and everything I practice, I would make myself wake up and like, is this a bad entity getting me or is it a good one? Never felt anything bad. I never did really, but I cannot go astral by myself anymore. And this has been going on probably for 2.5 years. I'm telling you, it's the weirdest thing ever because I used to travel everywhere. And so I took my left hand, I put it behind my back because I felt like I was on my back. Someone was taking me. I felt it and I said, let me see. I want to see where I'm going. And I saw stars and I saw planets. I could see it. I was flying through some ether, but I put my hand down and I felt a skate, like an ice skate with like a pointy toe.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, I got you now. Because, well, this has been going on for so long, but it took me months to train myself to wake up during this. So now that I'm getting good at it and I talked to this person finally, this being, and first of all, they said I was working for the United States. Number one, that pissed me off in general. And I said, I have my own rights. I'm my own being. I want to know what you're doing with me. And then I saw this person in another lucid thing, and they said, I said, are you the one who keeps taking me every night? I just want to know if it's you. And she said, yeah. She said, but the good thing about you is you get to go home. We don't. And I freaked out at that point because I'm like, well, if I'm doing this work at night, am I getting paid for this? I was being a smart ass as usual. No, total smart ass, excuse my friend. I was like, you're taking me to do all these jobs. I knew I was doing something. So
getting access for sure. That's pretty wild, Dory.
I'm telling you. And once I heard her on the air, actually I had my cell phone with my headset because my husband was watching the show and now I have the computer, so he's sleeping. And I'm like, oh my God, she's going through what I did. But I mean, literally, this is what's happening to me. But another thing I wanted to ask you was about the attachments, astral attachments, because probably 4.5, 5 years ago, I was in a room and all these little kids were around me and they had a glove on like Michael Jackson. You know the Michael Jackson glove he used to wear?
Yeah.
That silver glove. They had one glove on, not on the other hand, and they were pulling something off me. And I kept saying, what are you doing to me? And they said, well, we have to because it stings us. So we have to use the glove. All little kids, 3, 4 years old, little kids, not adults, nothing like that. And it would turn into marbles. It would fall to the floor and turn into marbles. They said, we're doing this because of your advancement. You're advancing faster than they thought. So we have to get all these attachments off you. And that was in the astral. But it was all little kids.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like a game. It was a game to them because I heard someone in the background, like a teacher, saying, get everything you can. Who gets to find it first kind of thing with them.
Wow.
And yeah, they were just throwing like these things and they go, zzz, and then they turn into marbles. But they had that little Michael Jackson glove. It's the only thing I could think of. I'm there like laying there going, Christ, what's going to happen to me? And I've done a lot of things in my life, but I'm like, this was freaking me out.
Man, you've had some serious experiences there, Dory.
Oh, my whole life. I mean, it's nothing new.
Yeah.
But now I'm aware. And, from my studying, and I'm very adamant about knowing what and what to do now. My friends kind of just accept me for whatever. But I know what I'm doing to a certain point. But to hear your stories, I said to a friend of mine behind the scenes, not to talk behind your back, you're acting like a first grade astral person when you're actually like a 20th grade. You're more in tune than you think you are. So remote viewing or whether it's automatic writing, I've done it all. Not that you have to do that to be something different than you are, but if you're tapped into it, there's always a guide by you that can actually help you. And maybe this is a gift from God that you came onto the show, and I never call in to Solaris. I just listen constantly. I love her. I just listen constantly. I'm like, I got to call this girl like right now, only because I think we're here to help each other, if that makes sense.
For sure.
I wish somebody was there to call me, you know what I mean? And say, hey, girl, you're not crazy, but, you're very, very way ahead of your grade level.
That's what I call her. She's an old soul. I was talking to her prior to the show. Yeah,
definitely.
She's been around the block on Earth several times over.
Well,
for sure.
I've definitely had some experience with sort of guide-like beings where I can't really recall anything specific, but I know that when I've wanted to experience certain things out of body or see certain things out of body, I've always asked, may I see this or can I experience this, feeling or can I go to this place? And you know, it always seems like there's always somebody there that's very helpful. But I've never had, like you were talking about, you said you had like a person trying to pull you out before. Yeah, I
It's
don't
the
think
same
I've ever
person.
had any.
It's the same
Okay,
person,
yeah.
but what I do to screw with them after I knew what was happening is I said, take
Right.
me to someplace beautiful. I want to see something beautiful. I want to see no
Mm-hmm.
more tragedies. Because I could feel them
Right.
pulling me. Now you got to go find a person. I saw a picture. I'd be like in a theater with all these people, and I'd be going face to face to find a certain individual. I don't know what happens to them after the fact, but I knew that's what I did. So I'm like, okay, cool. I worked for you. Now you work for me.
Right.
So maybe it was
Right.
my
I get
free
this,
will.
absolutely. I get the sense that I think there's jobs for people in the astral world. I think that, yeah, there's different, you know, sort of workers. There's probably like there's a place for people who are confused, who don't know what they're doing. And I don't know if this just applies to people who are living and leaving their body, but this may apply to people who have passed on and, you know, who have been assigned certain jobs to help people and, you know, who are still living and things like that. But it's definitely interesting. There's like a network of some kind of, I don't know, like helper people or light workers or guides, and it's really interesting.
I've never killed anybody physically in the astral, but I know when I've come to where someone was messing with me. Like they were trying to get me, and I was always protected. I can't say that I wasn't. So I wouldn't like do the fighting thing on that, but I'd be fighting on another level.
Yeah.
So yes, I do believe we're being taken.
Yep, absolutely. Access is the word I see.
Absolutely.
And Dory, I'm going to let you go in a second here, but did you have a final question? It's great to see you.
No, that's it. That's it. I just wanted to say thank you, and you go, girl. You know, and
thanks,
you know,
Dory.
if you need us, you know where we are. So you take care. God bless you. Right,
take care, Dory.
You
too, honey. Thanks for taking the call. Bye-bye.
Sure thing. Bye. Yeah, Dory's great. Well, good information there from Dory. Thank you for calling in, by the way.
Yeah, that was nice. I like her.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's awesome. She reminds me of Anne Margaret in that picture. That's a very pretty picture of you, Miss Dory. I don't know if you saw it or not because you're on your cell phone, aren't you? But yeah, it was very pretty picture there. But yeah, it's really phenomenal. And I also think that, I don't think I actually know there are spiritual teams that we work with, and not necessarily astral, but actually the celestial types, what I call off-worlders, and certain healing teams that I know have been around me when I started doing healing work. And of course, when you go through initiation, now obviously you've been through initiations, have you not? Or
in terms of
esoteric teachings or any type of, I know you've been into Enochian magic, and let me ask you this. Have you been initiated into that, or how did you get involved with the Enochian magic?
Well, I've always been interested in it. I was more so kind of reading about it and not working with it. But when I met John, he had developed a different sort of approach to it. I think it was more of a meditational kind of channeling approach as opposed to going to the elaborate ceremony work that a lot of Enochian magicians go through. And I'm not saying that stuff's not necessary or useful. It's just John's stuff was a little bit more spiritual as opposed to magical. And I found it to be really, I don't want to say it was easier, but it made more sense, if that makes sense. And I've only actually went through it once. I tried doing this sort of a meditational work where you're supposed to access the higher ethers in the planes. And, you know, when I was sitting and doing it, just at home or whatever, it didn't do much for me. But when I actually had an out-of-body experience where I went into one of the ethers, and the way I described it, and I described it to John, he said it was exactly how another person who experienced the same thing going through that ether described it as well. And I didn't know. I had no knowledge of this. So it was pretty interesting. I think that perhaps this stuff is accessed through out-of-body experiences. Only certain people who are interested in it can tap into it that way. Right. So I don't know.
That makes sense. Well, we receive it. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say with initiation stuff, I've been initiated into one of the magical orders I was in, and I was only in one, and that was enough.
Right.
But it was not something I found to be very magical or useful spiritually. And I was in my early 20s, and I feel like, you know, that was sort of a darker time in my life when I was really confused about what to do magically and spiritually. So I feel like it was not a real initiation. I think it was just sort of, you know, your typical fraternal magic order where it was very there's like the hazing or whatever that went on and things like that. And I just think that's a really negative approach to the craft. So
I agree with you on that one. I've been through several initiations with different types of covens, and of course I do my own work now, but I will tell you that the most powerful initiations I've ever received were usually on the inner planes, and also I was very lucky because I encountered some really powerful teachers along the timeline back in the 80s and 90s where I don't find these people anymore. And of course I learned from people who were extremely advanced in consciousness and were actually very powerful conduits for the initiation. So, and Enochian initiations, I've been through those too, which is, I can talk to you off air about, but those were pretty powerful, and they're not like what you say or what you do with Enochian magic at all. These are powerful symbols, and I don't know if many people are familiar with them. I know that they're extremely off-world. I mean, they're just really incredibly powerful. And not only have I used those for myself, but when I did initiations on other people, they saw these phenomenal images of angels, huge, or like celestial angels. I'm talking really powerful imagery. And actually, it wasn't just one or two people. I mean, and I don't put the intent or implantation or anything. I mean, literally, people were seeing these images by this frequency and by the symbols alone. It was amazing. So I'm a firm believer in how magic works, how the symbols work. And once again, when you see symbols through the matrix of life and the illusion of, people misuse symbols all the time. I mean, I have to tell you this, that it's always, and a lot of people think that the inverted pentagram is satanic. And I understand that they use that, but we use it for other things. It's not necessarily, there is no up or down in space. So you kind of have to kind of reverse everything and just kind of negate that whole thing. It's just really about what people want to do with the symbol. I mean, you can take any symbol. You can take the Pillsbury Doughboy and make it a satanic symbol. So
exactly, and
which it probably is. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. Oh Lord.
No, it's just like so funny, but I mean, it's just amazing to me. But I do think the inner work is really powerful, and the meditation and affirmations and the I guess repetitive is the word, to constantly put that in there and then raise your vibratory rate to the next level. And I think that a lot of covens, I mean, not necessarily covens, but groups have a real it's just like polluted. The energy is just not clear, in my opinion. So sometimes it's best to work alone. Unless you're at a real high resonance wave with other people in the collective. Otherwise, they'll bring you down, and they have too much drama. Yeah. I mean, I've seen the polarization of people. Oh, for sure. So you have to be careful. That's actually
right. That's actually a big reason why I left, was because I had a falling out with a friend who happened to have been going through the initiation process, and she was going to be initiated into the same order, and I knew she was cursing me, and I knew people who knew this, and I was trying to bring that forth to the higher ups, and these people didn't listen to me. And they didn't do anything about it. They were just decided to still let this person into the order. And I was like, you know what? If you're going to allow people like this in, I don't want to be in. I don't want to be attached to it.
Good for you.
And to be perfectly honest, it's very misogynistic. It's very sexist. There's a lot of male ego going on, and I think they expect that if you're, you're an attractive woman going into a magical group, that they could just expect you to be, sexually initiated or into them sexually or give them anything. It's just wrong. I just don't feel that if I want to be appreciated from a magical ability, not because, for those reasons.
Right. It becomes a sex cult. And I was lucky not to get involved in a lot of that, but I did hear a lot of different stories about different organizations that were very promiscuous, shall we say. And it's really losing its potency on a magical level. I mean, I understand Kundalini and Tantra. That's with you and your partner, though. But we're talking about real internal spiritual work on a very high level of consciousness and a high alchemy. And that stuff, there's no place for that craziness. I mean, you have to transcend everything, but I do see it, and it is very polluted. Now, did you say how did you know she was cursing you? You said she was actually doing rituals against you?
Yeah, actually, I was present during a ritual that took place in her home, and I had noticed in one of her altars that she happened to have some items that were linked to me.
Oh, jeez, I would have said something.
I did. And she just looked at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what, like that dumbfounded, like, oh my God, she figured it out, but I'm going to try and cover it up kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is ridiculous. This is so ridiculous. This is child's play. This is so stupid. And of course, it all slingshotted back on her, and she's, not living the best of life right now. And
it does.
I didn't. I'm not that kind of person to wish that upon somebody, but, karma's a bitch.
Yeah, it is a bitch. What's funny, too? I'm not like that either, but I have noticed, and I'm not conceited. I mean, when I was younger, I was pretty good looking, but I'll tell you, man, women are jealous, and I'm sure you understand this because you're very attractive, too. And I'll tell you point blank, man, I don't know what it is, but they have issues, and not all women. There's some wonderful females out there. But I'll tell you what, man, I don't get it, but that I've seen that, too, where they have to be the center of attention, and they have to be the head high priestess or whatever.
I think it's the way that society's portrayed women. You have to be 90 pounds and, perfect skin, perfect body, whatever. And I think that a lot of that mentality brings on a competition between other women.
They're very competitive. That's a very good call. Yeah, that's what I see too.
Yeah, for sure.
The only type of competition I ever did was when I was doing martial arts and women's advanced kickboxing. And that's the kind of competitive stuff.
Yeah, and that's a respectable competition. That's
right, exactly.
You shake hands, everybody wins.
Right. And
exactly.
there's no BS and petty behavior. But yeah, once it starts getting polluted like that, you have to kind of break the arrow and walk away. And that's what I've noticed. And once again, I think we need role models and I'm not saying all covens are like that or all magical groups, whatever group they are. It's just that there are a lot out there that are very immature, that they watch television and they think that that's how their cult or their group is supposed to function. And it's not even close to the truth. I think they've lost the lineage for celestial alchemy, where that true heritage is very, very pure and that you have to think on a very high level of spirituality in order to access it, and they're not getting it. They're getting a different dimensional space.
I think they get like a rock star mentality in a sense, like, oh, I'm a magician, I'm a witch, this is something that I can use for cool points or something, and it just seems like that's a lot of, it's like an image thing.
Yeah, it's glorified.
It seems like, sex, power, money, that's what you need. That's what you need to get out of craft, and I just think that that's the first mistake.
I totally agree with you on that one. Yeah, well, they'll get it eventually. It may take them a couple of lifetimes, but the whole objective is to not have to come back 1,000,001 times and incarnate on the earth. I mean, you want to access your avatar abilities and access yourself and go to the highest level, and then change the world for the better for everyone. I mean, not just for yourself, but actually do something productive on this world while you're here. And I know you're doing that, and I know I'm doing the best I can while I'm here as well. Many listeners. So that's really what we're here for. I mean, we're not here to play these stupid games.
Right.
That's for darn sure.
We don't got time for that in this day and age.
Heck no. No, I don't have time for the drama. I've been through enough with the psychotronic warfare and the covert intelligence programs, believe me. So I don't need any more of these petty people. And that's another thing. They couldn't handle. If they ever got inducted into the covert programs I was in, they would have a nervous breakdown immediately. This is and they think there's really powerful psychics and they're powerful mediums. And I'm thinking to myself, if you get interfaced with this artificial intelligence, you guys are going down, and you're going to go down fast. And so that's why I always tell people, be careful. When you're working in these realms and you're working with consciousness and dimensional space, you have to understand the mechanics of the universe. You have to be fortified and full light harmonic. And you also have to know how to deflect these attacks, whether they're psychic attacks, linear attacks, or technological warfare, which is really big, as I mentioned earlier. So without me preaching to the choir.
Absolutely. Nope, that's on spot. I feel like, once you have that ego up, it's like your downfall. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, the I am God syndrome, I call it. Yeah, I used to do that. It's funny when I did initiations on my students, and I had different kinds of healing systems and other types of initiations. They get so blasted out energetically in higher consciousness that they would become almost arrogant and conceited for about 3 months, and I would call it the I am God syndrome, and then they would settle down energetically. But literally, they get into this space of everything changes so much and so drastically for them, they can't relate to anybody. So they think they're like these. Right. So then you have to kind of say, okay, I'm kicking you out of the nest now. You go figure it out. But it's really fun. I'm glad you're doing the teaching, though. And also, you're working at the bookstore. So obviously, you have access to people there, and you can help them along the way when they're searching for information, which is really nice. Now, you said something about writing articles or a possible book. Have you started doing that?
I have a few different things in the works. I'm actually doing articles for the bookstore. They're just little things usually about, most of them are about alchemy for now. Nice. I have a kind of a little anthropological based project that I'm working on, but it's kind of hard to find some of the research for it since I'm not able to be out in the field actively right now. But there was a discovery, and this was a NOVA program actually just recently, that Neanderthals had a way to make this adhesive through a dry distillation process for attaching their spearheads to the sticks or whatever. And to me, that's like a really high form of cognitive behavior, and just knowing how to do this through nature and interacting with natural substances. And to me, that's just that's a sign of early alchemy. And I almost wonder, where are they getting this from? Are they coming up with it on their own, or is it something that they've received from a higher intelligence? And I don't know, I'm not going to stretch that far probably, but just in terms of anthropology, I think it's a really neat concept.
That's fascinating. Well, the way I see it, and I'm not really stretching, but to me, it would indicate definitely a connection either to off-world species or accessing their cellular memory. I mean, one way or the other, they were receiving data, whether it's a download of some kind or if it's cellular memory where all of a sudden they have this eureka moment, which I find when I look back and I look at all the timelines of what's been going on here, I'm pretty sure they were accessing something at the cellular level. Now we have interference. We have so much technological interference that people aren't able to access that as easily. And even when you meditate,
Absolutely.
I mean, we were talking about this just earlier. I mean, it's really hard to rest at night without being intruded upon or accessed. I mean, you have to really shield yourself, and you can shield yourself psychically. But once again, there's the technological accessing that they can do through satellite sweeps and other things they can do remotely that people are not familiar with. So those are things that people have to be on the lookout for.
For sure.
Yeah. And also, I was going to ask you about your paranormal group. Now, did you just start this group, or how long have you been around doing this with the paranormal?
Yeah, we just kind of got together at the end of the summer. We went out to a few different locations. We haven't. We're very busy. We're the three of us. It's just three of us. There's two of us are students, and the other guy is he works for the government. He's like a security guard for some sort of government office, and he's got to be careful because sometimes, when we go out and do stuff like that, we don't want to get in trouble, or we don't want to get weird looks from people like, police officers and things like that if we're out and about in places we're technically not supposed to be. But
so is he your cover?
Yeah, right, pretty much. we usually make sure that it's okay before we do anything like that. But yeah, we haven't had a lot of luck in terms of evidence yet, but I'm hoping that once it starts getting warmer here, and hopefully it's going to stay warmer here now that it's a little higher temperature today, but
right.
We want to get out and start experimenting with some more areas in the cities. And
so are you going to the historical sites, or where are you going for possible haunts?
We did go to a historical site. It's Fort Snelling in Minnesota, and there's lots of abandoned buildings that were just kind of left there. Like they keep them maintained somewhat, but they were using it as like a tourist attraction for a while. And there's a giant Native American war thing that went on there. And I know that sounds just really vague, but there's a lot of history with the Lakota, Dakota people, and all that. So there's a wealth. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Where else did we went to the University of Minnesota. My school had a lot of suicide reports of the Washington Avenue Bridge, which is right over the Mississippi River. So we thought, hey, let's go under there. Let's try to get some recordings. Maybe we can figure something out. There was a poet professor who passed away, via suicide in the 70s, and we rented his book at the library, and we started reading from it to see if anything would show up, EMF or EVP, and we didn't get anything. A lot of the sound was really polluted by a lot of the cars and things like that, but we tried. So
interesting. So do you bring the equipment wherever you go? Or are you just using technology, or are you using your psychic radar as well? We're mostly doing equipment.
Are you? Okay. And research, of course, but it's very basic equipment. It's not like heavy duty stuff. We've all got digital recorders, and I have an EMF detector, and one of the guys he's a sort of an audio guy, so he's a few high powered microphones that pick up a lot of stuff. So we just kind of keep it simple. We make sure we don't carry too much stuff with us, so people aren't like, oh, what are these people doing? But
right. Well, that's good.
There's some historical places in the cities we'd like to try to get into, and I want to do it legitimately. I want to call and make it a case,
right.
kind of case working thing. But we're hoping to get some stuff taken off in the spring.
Excellent.
So maybe I'll have some more reports on that later.
Yeah, you'll have to come back and let us know about that. Well, with the EMF detectors, and I've said this a lot, there's obviously you can access different radio bands, so you have to be careful with that because sometimes you're accessing real-time data and people's conversations, even if it's just a piece of it. And people will say, oh, it's a spirit, it's a ghost, look. And I'm like, wait, back up the truck and start looking around because it could be something else. I mean, I understand about radio communication system very well. So, but yeah, I know you guys know that too. But there are real phenomena, different things that are actually based on real anomalies and spirits. Now, do you ever do any actually research for people's homes and possible haunts?
I haven't had the opportunity yet, but we do get a lot of customers in the store that are, in there to buy sage or figure out some cleansing rituals that they can do. And I'm really just kind of thinking that we should start like a off business where we go in and clean people's homes out for them, because I think some of these people are really in need, and especially if they got kids in the house or animals that are suffering from these paranormal experiences. I think that's close to home. So I think these people need some help.
I agree.
So.
Well, do some boogie blasting. I would. I used to do that for people also back in the day. I don't do much of that anymore, but people used to have me come over to their house and clear it out. And of course, because a lot of the time there's a lot of residual feed energies there, whether it's, paranormal or if it's just them with their bad energy. They don't know how to maintain higher frequencies, I guess is the word. But do you know who John Savage is? He's a paranormal investigator out there. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. He's been on my show. He's a real sweetheart. But if you want me to put you in touch with him, he actually does a group who does they are investigators for paranormal, so they're pretty cool.
Yeah,
pretty cool people.
Great. It's possible. It's possible I met him. I've been to a few expos where people like that show up, and I've shaken hands with some people. But
he has really good energy. He's well trained.
Okay,
He's very legit, and I think you'd really like him. If nothing else, I might put you in touch with him on Facebook. You can tell him I sent him.
Perfect. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think you'd really like him. But he's somebody I believe he's out there, and definitely connect in. That would be really good because your energy field your frequency is a lot higher. So, it's good for you to be around like minds, I guess is the word for sure. So what's coming up for you the next, this next few months? What are you up to?
Well, I'm finishing school right now. Actually, I'm going to have my bachelor's degree here in a couple. Well, I'm supposed to be done this semester, but I've taken on another minor program because I don't know, I just can't stay away from it. But so I'll be doing that.
Nice.
Other than that, I'm just hoping to get some more stuff kicked off for the paranormal group, and then possibly some more research for articles and things like that. So it's time to kind of let the winter melt away and just sort of start a bunch of new things again. So
well, that's great. So what's the pulse like of the students and the college kids and the campuses these days? I mean, what's going on with them? How are they tuned in? I mean, are they tuned into the bigger spectrum, or are they just kind of tunnel vision?
You get kind of a half and half thing. We have a lovely program at the University of Minnesota that's a spiritual center program, and they have classes like meditation. I took Ayurvedic medicine. I did my Reiki certification there.
Nice.
And, Minneapolis is a very liberal, open, there's a lot of spiritual people in the community. And I find that some of the, like I was saying earlier, a lot of the younger kids are coming from the school, and I've met some really neat people. But then you also see the brain dead zombies walking around texting on their phone, running into stuff. And it's kind of embarrassing.
Right.
But,
well, considering what's going on in this country, I was curious insofar as what's going on with the students and how they're perceiving the reality from day to day. If there's a total disconnect or if they're actually connecting in. But it sounds like you said, there's 50-50.
Yeah, there's definitely the people who are, they're researching that stuff. They're definitely into it. They're looking at their academic career as an opportunity to expand in certain fields. Like I've met some really cool kids who are into botany and stuff, who are interested in like ethnopharmacology and the ways we can make new medicines by tapping into those, mystical sort of plant resources and things like that. And but then there's all these other kids who are just kind of it just seems like they're programmed. They're going to school, their parents probably paid for it, and they don't know what they're doing. They're just there because they know they're supposed to be in college. Yeah.
Right.
So
I see that a lot.
It's kind of sad. It seems like they have a direction, but they don't really have a legitimate stopping. I don't know if it's a stopping point or a future, but
what's sad is they get these degrees, and then they literally, the job market sometimes is so terrible that half the time they can't even get the job that they're qualified for.
Sure.
So that's coming into fruition here in America, of course, and we've got some problems here we need to rectify, without a doubt. Now you said you have a shamanic background, right? So how'd you get into that?
Well, I've always kind of been interested in natural medicine and natural, obviously earth-based magic and things like that, and communicating with the spirit world or traveling to the spirit world. So I kind of consider myself, having an out-of-body experience background as sort of being somewhat of a shaman. But I don't know if I'd ever use that title for myself. But anthropologically speaking, though, I really am interested in studying different cultures, these shamanic history seems to be kind of a lost or dying art.
Right.
For instance, the Sami people in northern Scandinavia are a big interest to me, and I think that we can learn a lot from their traditions and their practices, especially, if you examine what they do and compare it to a lot of the other people from other parts of the world. It's all very similar, and there's a reason for that, because it's all, they're all working on a similar conscious level. They're all on the same vibe. So
Right.
it's kind of neat to compare those things. And I wrote a really cool paper for one of my Native American classes, literature classes, and I compared the use of drums, ceremonial drums for shamanic purposes, from the Sami people versus the Ojibwe Native Americans. So and there's a lot of similarities. Yeah.
Right. That's interesting. Well, it seems to be this psychic link. It's like this global hive collective, I guess you could call it on some level, where they actually are in communication, whether it's the inner planes or whatever. It seems like there's a parallel between these different tribes and different groups of people who are on that path.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I found too that I've had a lot of reports of people working with or meeting or working with modern day shamans in different parts of the world who, there seems to be a little bit of corruption going on too, especially in Peru, where they're doing a lot of the ayahuasca ceremonies. And I've heard people tell me that they're taking advantage of, Westerners or people from the United States who are coming down there and, wanting to do these spiritual journeys, but they're kind of marketing it as some sort of they're trying to do a marketing thing, and it's just,
right.
It's sort of bad.
Right, well, a lot of people have lost their lives there, if I'm not mistaken. I think a few people did. Yeah, so there might not be.
I wanted to. Yep, it's not. I've heard a lot of bad stories, and I've also heard a lot of really neat and beautiful stories too. But it'd be really interesting to get down there and do some ethnographic work or something, and kind of expose some of these things.
Right, I agree. Well, that's the thing I've noticed, the past, I guess, 10 years, I want to say 10, 12, 15 years, it seems to me like the sincerity has gone kind of down the sewer. Insofar as snake oil salesmen, it seems to me like everybody and their mother's out there now, and they're kind of watered down the mystical path to a point where, it's a shame, because those of us who are hardcore mystics, we don't appreciate that, because we're very diligent.
And it's interesting. I can walk down my street here and see, a yoga studio on every corner
of the
block. And it's like, I get it. It's cool that people are opening up to this thing, but they don't even know why they're doing it. And they don't even know what kind of yoga they should be doing. They don't know. It's sad, but
I think Madonna started that. I don't know. It was a trendy thing in Hollywood, and everybody and their mother jumps on the bandwagon. And I get it. Yeah, it can get you fit, but I'm a martial artist, So for me, it's like a lot of the static holds they do is nothing, because I'm like, you should really take a hardcore martial arts class, but they couldn't handle it. But yeah, I mean, I understand that aspect of it, but I do think it's all foo-foo now and woo-woo. A lot of it is. And I've studied with some really powerful spiritual teachers from India, and I can tell you, I mean, the mantras we did and the initiations I went through with Shakti Pan, things like that, for example, very powerful, and it didn't have anything to do with that kind of yoga. Nothing at all. Nothing close.
Right.
So, it's just amazing. I guess it does teach a certain level of discipline to some degree, but I think it's been watered down. It's a shame to see that. I'd like to see more sincerity when it comes down to the mystical path, because I think it's been disrespected to some degree, especially these days.
And I agree with that. And then there's a lot of, the paranormal shows that they've had on TV lately. I get it. I mean, it's cool that, they're opening people to this legitimate field, and I take it very, very seriously scientifically. But, it seems like they make it like everybody can go out and do this, and, I don't know.
No, not everybody can do that without a bunch of boogies and a psychological break.
Yeah, and I think half the stuff on the shows are faked anyway. So
oh, absolutely. It's all drama and theater. Yeah, that's what it's entertainment. Once again, it's entertainment. I don't even watch television, and I've heard horror stories about those ghost hunter shows. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yep.
We're almost getting ready to wrap this up pretty soon. I want to say, Kyle, it's been so wonderful to have you on. I've really enjoyed communicating with you and having you on tonight. It's been fascinating.
Thank you so much.
You're very
I've had a great time.
It's been great. I want to have you back for sure. You're just wonderful, and you're very advanced, I must say. And I know everybody enjoyed listening to you. And I hope everybody appreciated the show tonight. And please stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Mickey coming up next to sail you on into the night from Down Under, as they always do with their fabulous show, of course. So we have a few more minutes left here. Is there anything you wanted to touch on before? I don't know if I covered everything. Is there anything you wanted to address real quick? We have a few more minutes.
Not that I can think of. If anybody else has any questions they want to get in real quick, maybe we can open that up.
Looking in chat here, it looks like it's pretty. They're in their own orbit. I don't know what everybody's talking about. I poke my head in there. I'm like, okay, well, they're talking about something. Okay, good. Talk amongst yourselves, I guess is the word. Okay, we did touch on the dark arts a little bit in the psychic self-defense. So what's a real nice technique you can suggest for our listeners to create a nice psychic shield?
First and foremost, it's important to be self-aware, I think. You have to know that whatever is out there, I mean, you can't let it hurt you, and you have to feel like this, you have to be fearless, and I think that's important. In terms of actual ritualistic practices for protection, I would highly recommend people look into a lesser banishing ritual. It's a very old, common ritual that a lot of magicians have been using when they open up any religious or spiritual ceremony. So I would. I think
religious is good too. That. They need to banish some of that stuff.
I suppose it is. Yeah.
They bring in some bad stuff. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with banishing. I've done that too, and very effective without a doubt. Sometimes you just have to get rid of stuff. That's
for sure.
Yeah. And also, now when you rest, you obviously set your grids up at home. Do you set a certain shield up around your house as well? Normally, like a psychic shield around your place?
Yeah, I do. I do a basic saging. I'll do frankincense, and I'll do that ritual, the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram in every area. And I just feel like I kind of always have this like sort of psychic, like, hey, this is my place. You're not welcome here unless I tell you. You can come in. But and I think that I've had a lot of positive experiences since I've been kind of approaching every place that I move into that way. So.
Right.
Just standing your ground and letting whatever's out there know that this is your space, and if you're invited in, you're welcome to stay for a limited time, but nothing gets to hang around unless you have their permission. They have your permission. So
exactly, claim your sacred space, and that includes your body. By the way, most people don't realize that, but this is your what I call your divine temple, and you don't want it infiltrated unless you choose to be in communication with something. I think a lot of people get lost in that space too. But it's very important to set your boundaries, people. I don't have to tell everybody out there listening. I know they understand that. But I think in a world of today where this country seems to be meshing with a lot of weirdness, people are forgetting that there are boundaries. They're kind of like getting into each other's spaces. And with that comes a lot of debris and other things I've noticed as well. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I have. I've noticed quite a bit.
Yep. I have.
And we're out of time here. Well, thank you again, Kyle. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Everybody have a great week. Thanks, Kyle.
Yep.
See you soon.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Listening to Revolution